Hey, ho! Let's go to AudiofileUSA.com where you can order heaps of excellent and near-mint vinyl records because that's all they sell. Excellent and near-mint vinyl records. Don't get caught up in that VG plus, VG minus G loop. Just get the best records at AudiofileUSA.com. They ship worldwide. They've got heaps of Metallica, heavy rock, and every other genre and label you can think of. That's AudiofileUSA.com. Go there now and find your holy grail. And while we're at it, let's talk Seams Easy. Seams Easy record jacket repair strips fix vinyl seam splits from the inside. You find an old ratty record in your collection, make the cover perfect with Seams Easy. Get them at seamseasy.com. That's 2 Z's, seamseasy.com. Repair your record jackets like the pros. Go to seamseasy.com. And finally, Groove Washer. Made in the USA, the very best record cleaner you can get. The Groove Washer record cleaning fluid is designed for vinyl records, where the other stuff is probably made in someone's bathtub. Get the confidence for your record collection for the long term. GrooveWasher.com has many options and packages starting for less than $20 and bundles that will last you for years of record spinning enjoyment. That's GrooveWasher.com. Here's a 10% off coupon. Enter promo code Vinyl Guide 10 at checkout. That's GrooveWasher.com, proud to be made in the USA. And with that, let's get into this week's episode of The Vinyl Guide.
Hey there, this is Robert Trujillo from Metallica, and you are listening to The Vinyl Guide.
Do you listen to and collect vinyl records? Well, you're in luck. Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast made for record nerds like yourself. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope you're well. It's Nate. Thanks for listening to The Vinyl Guide. Thanks for downloading. And thank you all in advance for sharing these episodes on your social media. It's a huge help. And today is a very special episode number 230. And I'm going to cut right to the chase because I know that's what you're all waiting for. Now, this week, 4th of July week in the United States, and even though I no longer live there, I do want to wish all our American friends and listeners well. Happy 4th of July weekend. Everyone, I hope you're safe. And really, please enjoy this episode featuring a very American artist, Robert Trujillo of Metallica. Now, Metallica may be the greatest rock export from the United States, selling over 125 million records worldwide and still able to pack stadiums from around the world if there was an ability to schedule a stadium show now, which kind of raises the question, what has Metallica been doing during the COVID-19 lockdowns? Well, Robert discusses that very topic today and lots more. Now, the good news is that he's staying quite busy. Robert's been working on a vinyl project with his band Infectious Grooves. It's a limited record store day release featuring rare tracks, which you'll be able to get from your local record shop soon. Today, Robert also talks about refreshing and working in his home studio, doing distance demos with his Metallica bandmates during the COVID lockdowns. Plus, we talk about Robert's journey with the story of Jaco Pastorius, the phenomenally talented and unfortunately short-lived bass player in which Robert produced the documentary on his life. And we cover a lot of ground with Robert's years of Ozzy, joining the big Metallica machine, and more. Now, I ain't gonna lie, it's an absolutely humbling honor to be hosting Robert Trujillo on the show, and it's another in a long line of great artists that we've featured here on the Vinyl Guide. So, if you enjoy this episode, please check out some of our other interviews that we have available, like Matt Cameron of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, episode 219 of the Vinyl Guide, Paige Hamilton of Helmet, episode 216 of the Vinyl Guide, Buzz Osborne of Melvins, episode 211 of the Vinyl Guide, Jazz Coleman of Killing Joke, episode 210, Stephen Van Zandt of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, episode 200, Wolfgang Fleur of Kraftwerk, episode 140, and many, many, many more. All episodes are available at thevinylguide.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Sonnet, or wherever you get these damn podcasts. And just before we start today's interview, just a quick reminder to please support our show sponsors. That includes AudiofileUSA.com, online worldwide shipping of vinyl records, Seems Easy record jacket repair strips, and of course, the Groove Washer record cleaner from GrooveWasher.com. These are all American businesses. They all have great products and services, and each of them are focused on promoting and furthering the interests of the vinyl record collecting community. So again, AudiofileUSA.com, SeamsEasy.com, GrooveWasher.com. Please consider giving them your business. And there we go. We are done with the upfronts, so grab yourself a cool one or a hot one, depending on the time of day you're listening to this. Please enjoy our conversation with Robert Trujillo of the mighty Metallica. Hello?
Hello.
Hey. Who's
Hey,
this?
it's Robert. Do you see me or?
Actually, I don't. I can't. Here, I'll start the video.
Oh, there you are. Trying to get. There we go. That's better. Okay, cool. We do these Zoom chats as a band sometimes, and someone is always having a problem with it. But cool, man. Where are you located?
Sydney, Australia.
Wow. So that's where you lived?
That's where I live. Even though I grew up in the Bay Area, but I started dating an Australian girl about year 2000, and the story just kind of writes itself.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world. So we were supposed to have you guys here earlier this year, and that's been rescheduled, and now all of a sudden everyone's schedule is in disarray. Yeah,
it's a weird thing how it just sort of ended up kind of spiraling in that direction. No one saw it coming, and I don't know what it's like over there, but over here it's pretty intense, especially in California. There's some people that are very focused on the quarantine. Like my wife keeps us pretty together here with it. And we live in Topanga Canyon, so we're kind of up in the hills and the mountains, so we're a bit secluded. But we have the beach right down the street, so we can get there easy. So we have sort of a routine that works, but we're not out and hanging around in public too much. So we're following the quarantine pretty well, but I get it. You might be in another situation where it's more challenging. I can imagine New York, if you're got to use the elevators and, so, everybody has it, has a different challenge, I guess you could say. But here it's interesting because it's pretty divided. There are people that don't believe in it, and then there are people that don't care. And then there are people that are really, really following the rules, the quarantine. So anyway,
we ended up here in Australia. Everyone pretty much followed the rules. Everyone was on their best behavior, and because of that, we're now starting to exit out. And in fact, earlier this week, they've been reopening businesses. This week we do schools. The next week you can now go to, the movies or whatever.
Right.
Our governor just announced that as of next week, strip clubs are now reopened. So I figured that's probably okay. We're towards the end of it now, if that's what's
right. Well, you must be, because they want that here, but we've actually had a spike. I think people got comfortable with the fact that we were doing better, but it wasn't quite there yet. But there was so much pressure on the local governments that they almost had to start opening. But they were opening businesses with the idea that people would abide by the mask rules and social distancing. But once you get a few drinks in these people, man, it's just like that goes out the window. So now there's a spike, in certain parts of the states. Arizona's had a pretty bad spike, like really bad in the last few days. So, I think in general, it's just kind of everybody's got to be really responsible for their situation and how they handle it. And, then it sounds like that's what's going on over there. The people have been really good about it.
Yeah. So we'll see if this is the right litmus test here. If
right,
it feels
cool.
like we're doing it all right, but we'll see. I think actually, based on this, this whole exercise, I'm trying to think about what is the music culture going to be like after coronavirus?
Great question. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've done some thinking about this. What do you think it will look like, and what do you think can be done to keep it alive and fruitful?
Well, for starters, I would say one of the benefits is that it forces a creative person to be creative. I mean, we're fortunate in that we have an outlet through music or art, to dive deeper. Like I had a home studio many years ago that kind of went dormant for a while. In fact, most of the gear was in storage. And after, I don't know, it's been about 12, 13 years, I broke it out and set it up and started using it, and actually did some really cool stuff with it, both experimental and a couple things for Metallica. And then I ended up getting all new gear, pretty much new computer, new interface, mixing console.
You got your passion back for it.
Yeah. So basically what's happened in the last few months for me is I've really focused on new ideas, become very motivated, started playing a lot of piano and guitar, but I'm not a great piano player, but using it as a tool for writing, and that's something that I hadn't really done in the past. So I've discovered things in my creativity that I wasn't quite in tune with, So it's become a positive thing for me, and I get it, man. Every day, everybody has it different, but sometimes it's hard for me to, even just get out of bed. And I have this whole routine that I do in terms of stretching and kind of physically getting into the day. And then my son and I started surfing again. Every afternoon we go. So we kind of wait till the crowd thins out, and we usually hit the beach around 5:00 and surf for a couple hours. So, you kind of find your way in all this, but creatively, between myself and my son, he's got a little studio set up too. And even my wife, my daughter, she's playing drums now. Like, we're actually channeling our energy in a positive way through creativity and doing little projects for ourselves. But it's definitely been a good thing for me, because there's a lot of things I've done even in the last since the beginning of the year, around the time that the Australian dates got canceled, I just dove into music, and that's how the Infectious Groove thing came about. The EP, I was like, hey, why don't I got a little bit of time here? Why don't I dive into this?
All right. So it's been actually a benefactor. The Infectious Grooves EP was perhaps spawned by you getting back into recording. Did you find the tapes? Is that kind of how it came about? What inspired you to get back into it?
It's a really great, I think it's a great story. So basically, we were invited to go down to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and play a show. And there were some promoters down there that were excited about bringing the band there. The band had never been to South America. In fact, we really only toured Australia and, a little bit of Europe, a bit more of France in Europe. And then, couple go-arounds in the States, nothing extensive. And never went to South America. So the offer and the idea seemed really great. We didn't really know what we were getting into, but I was like, well, you know what? Wait a minute. I've got the time to do it. Let's see what happens. We've only played like 2 shows in 25 years. And I was excited too, because Brooks Wackerman, who was obviously the drummer for Infectious Grooves many years ago. I mean, he was 15 years old when he played drums on the first Infectious Grooves record, which was Groove Family Psycho. And to get on stage with him again to perform that music was really exciting to me, because some of that stuff was really challenging for any drummer. So it really kind of resonated in his style and his feel. Brooks has this unusual ability to play a hip hop groove and beat, and then throw in like incredible double kick patterns. So it's almost like if you took Slayer and combined it with like Parliament or something or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like he was doing this when he was 15, see, because he didn't have any rules or restrictions as to his approach to his drumming. So it was really fun to spontaneously create music around that kind of energy with him. So now you take that live for the first time again in almost 25 years. It was pretty exciting for me, you know? And so that we went down there, and I know we won a lot of people over because there were people there. I mean, they probably were barely born or not born at the time. So you got to understand there are a lot of Metallica fans down there, a lot of Suicidal Tendency fans down there. And then there were a lot of Infectious Groove fans. But at the end of it all, I think everybody understood that, oh, this is really cool music, and this is a great, fun performance, and we're having a great time. So they walked away from it like that. I mean, it was like 18,000 people there. But again, being an outdoor gig, and the personnel that was on stage, say, hey, we got to go check this out. So, almost like something really cool to do, but not really knowing exactly what it is, and then winning them over. So that was sort of, again, the first step. And I got home and I just thought about the energy of all that. And I had a tape. In fact, there's another tape too, but we'll get into that after. But I found a cassette tape that had a handful of songs that I thought were unreleased. It ended up being that a couple of them were released on compilations, but not much distribution. And then a couple things hadn't ever seen the light of day. And then one of those was a brand new song. So, I'm pretty tight with our friends at Record Store Day, Michael Kurtz, and I thought, this could be interesting. We also had gotten an offer to do Hellfest in France, and yet I felt almost guilty about playing Hellfest in front of that many people and not having a new product, to present to the world. And I thought, well, what if I put together an EP with some of these songs that have never been released, and basically finish them and get them mixed and mastered, and then get the artwork going, and actually take this thing and get it released through Record Store Day as a special vinyl release. There's no label, there's no management, so there are no rules. And I channeled that energy. Now the challenge in this was, it's the holidays. I mean, we got Christmas, New Year's, and nobody really wants to go in the studio at that time. So I was very lucky in that I was able to get, the current lineup in the studio at some point in time during the course of a week to actually track some of this stuff. And then I actually ended up playing guitar on it, a little bit of keyboard. So I had to kind of step outside of my comfort zone, which was actually cool too. That helped me realize that there were other kind of.
You didn't need anyone else. That's what you're through.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was calling. One of the tracks didn't have the original, like the drums were there and the rhythm guitars were there, but my bass was gone, and Adam Siegel, our original guitar player, his tracks were gone. So I had to basically retrack my bass, and then I played his guitar parts. Yeah. So, because he was like, "You want me to come in today?" It was like a Sunday. He's like, "I'm not coming in today." I was like, "Okay." It was all good though. I mean, again,
yeah, of course,
we're all friends, and
So just to be clear, these songs on the EP, there's 4 of them. 3 of them, yes, I believe you had demos of. Are they all re-recordings and then one new song, or are there 3 that were recorded back in the day and one?
Well, yeah. Here's what it is. So we actually used one of the songs is more of a remix of an original version, and that's the one where I think that was the one where I had to play the bass again, and so everything sort of stayed as planned, except I added me playing the bass track as it was originally written and recorded, and then I had to play the guitar on that one too. So that was like we had found the master for that recording. And that would be Payback's a Bitch. And then there's a brand new song that we recorded. And again, I was like, it was important for me to include Jim Martin, our current guitar player, to include him creatively on this if we could. So my goal is to go to release this and also be in France with the lineup, or some of the lineup that's actually on that record, you know what I mean, and represent it as best as we can. One of the songs we actually had to use the bed tracks from the cassette because we couldn't find the master tapes. So we were like, well, let's throw it onto Pro Tools and use it. It sounded great. There wasn't any damage to the tape.
Hey, if the Beatles could do it, why not?
Exactly. It's like a cassette tape, right? So basically, use the cassette tape, use the guitars and the bass from the cassette tape, and I just, we track vocals on top of it, and then, obviously, I added maybe a little bit of keyboards, and we kind of doctored it up, and it was just a lot. It was a really interesting, fun challenge because some of that music, it's like a time capsule. Even if it's on a cassette and you record on top of it, it's so special because, as I recall, a lot of that stuff, Infectious was a band that was always needed to capture the moment. So we would basically go, okay, we're gonna write a record. So we'd go into our rehearsal studio and we'd do 4-hour sessions, maybe 4 or 5 days a week, and not all that 4 hours is playing. You might play for 2.5 hours of it or whatever, and having some lunch, having a burrito or whatever, hanging out. But it was always stemming from the jam. So we would record a couple run-throughs of a body of music or a blueprint, and then the next time you would hear that song from the cassette that was actually in the room, the recording of on the cassette, we would hear that in the studio. And then we go, oh, okay, yeah, I remember I did this. You kind of put it all together, and then we would jam it out. And usually 2 takes, boom, done. Okay, there, we've captured the magic. A lot of that would have to happen in the rhythm section and the drums, and we go on to the next song. So it's a very different concept compared to, say, a band like Metallica or even like Suicidal Tendencies. You nurture the song, you demo it, it goes through a process, you build it that way, and it works, and that's great. But with Infectious, it was never that way. It was always important to capture the moments, and you would find that the excitement of the moment was what would be actually important to the song. So you're excited to hear the song off the cassette because you hadn't heard it in a while since you were in the rehearsal room. All of a sudden you're playing it and it's getting recorded to tape. So that was always our goal, and that's kind of how it went.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is when you hear the cassette with these bed tracks from Sound City, it's really neat for me because I'm like, oh man, how did we do that? Wow, we were having a lot of fun, and we were improvising and experimenting with a basic blueprint and some structure, but kind of going a little crazy with it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of basically overall, that's what the EP vibe is. And I mean, I'll tell you, I was up in San Francisco just before the pandemic, and I had a box of cassettes, and I brought the Ghetto Blaster down with me, and I drove because I wasn't going to fly. So I drove down 8 hours, and I found all these cassette tapes that I would have never had the time or the stamina to listen through. And I found this missing cassette with like, it must be 10 to 12 more songs. I was like, oh my God, there it is. I thought I lost it. So there's actually another album potentially that could come out.
We got a few more record store days covered now, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. And the beautiful thing about Record Store Day and what I love is they love the kind of those rarities, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They love to celebrate the rarities. The rarer, the better. Like when I put out the Jaco documentary film, we had his demo tapes, mm-hmm. and we met with Michael Kurtz, and Michael's like, "Why don't you put this out on vinyl? Let's celebrate it. It's mm-hmm. Jaco's demos of his first record, and we did, and it did really well, and it was celebrated." When I say did really well, it was just celebrated as this really beautiful work of art. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what it is, I mean, it's like rarities in music, sometimes they should be celebrated because you're capturing that moment, and it's usually pretty, it's going to be authentic, especially if it's older.
Oh, of course. I mean, like with the cassette tape, everyone could have re-recorded it, but you captured that lightning on the tape. And to recreate that, I would imagine no one would have been happy no matter how much time you would have spent on it.
I can't even imagine it because the recordings on these cassettes, at least with Infectious, it was the spontaneity. Mm-hmm. And then a lot factors into that, like, where our heads were creatively at that time, the spirit of what we were doing, our age, the recklessness in our playing. But then we were playing all the time. So it's pretty tight. The groove that we were on kind of, mm-hmm. We could play those songs again, but it wouldn't be the same, so I'm so glad that it's documented, and I'm telling you, it's like one cassette. And I immediately, when I got home, I sent it to one of my engineers who actually does digital transfers, mm-hmm. and he immediately transferred it for me to digital format, because if that cassette gets, it melts or, breaks or whatever, it's over, and that, it's just that fine line between losing something that, to me at least, is really precious. And those mixes are unique because what I used to do is I would mix to cassette, like late at night after a session, and just be me and the engineer, and I would do these kind of crazy mixes. So they don't live on any other cassettes or DATs. It was literally like, okay, press record, and then I do a cool mix of it. And so I'm so glad that I found this next cassette. We'll see where that goes and how that pans out. Yeah. But again, this all sort of kickstarted in Brazil, and then it sort of worked its way into the recording. Trying to get people to record during the holidays is not always the easiest thing to do. People are going out of town, they're just like, and I was very fortunate that I was able to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Going into the studio at the last minute, telling my wife, Sunday morning, I got to go in, I got to recut this bass and this guitar. What? It's like, I thought we were going to,
we have family coming over. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I got in trouble. We got through it, but they say sometimes, those mm-hmm. great kind of recordings or songs that you end up writing or whatever, oftentimes there's, kind of attached to some sort of stress or, kind of whatever.
Well, that's wonderful. And you brought up Jaco, and I got to really thank you for the work that you've done around the legacy of Jaco Pastorius, because he is one of my great heroes musically. Personally, he was a bit of a madman, but his music and what he did with the bass guitar was similar to what Eddie Van Halen did with the electric guitar. He just took it to a whole different space that I'm not sure anyone was aware existed.
Absolutely.
At what age did you discover Jaco?
Well, I discovered Jaco probably. I know the year. I mean, I got to do the math, but I saw him first play in 1980. What's it? 79. It was at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium.
She was Weather Report at that point.
It was with Weather Report. I feel like it was 79, and I just remember when I first saw a picture of him, because I was like in the record shop, and like friends of mine that were into jazz and fusion, we were all like kind of, hey man, you hear the new Stanley Clarke? You hear the new Lee Ritenour? It's like, whoa, check out, Al Di Meola with, Return to Forever, or Al Di Meola's solo records, Race with the Devil, Anthony Jackson. So we had all these bass players that we were really into. And I started talking about this guy, Jaco, and it was like, who, what's going on? This guy's like, dude, he's insane. And then you saw that picture of him on the back of Heavy Weather. And I was like, what is this guy? You know what I mean? It's like, he looks so mysterious. And, so it was really exciting to actually go see him and not really know much about him. Just all we knew about him was that he was this incredible, bass player. And then you go see him live and you see the energy and just sort of this incredible performer. I remember him sliding into his bass. He had like powder on the stage, and he slid in, like he put the bass on one side of the stage and he slid into it like home base or something, like it was sliding into home. So it was just really entertaining, and he took.
I don't think that was talcum powder, Robert. I think.
Well, you might be right. Those were definitely the years. I mean, I've heard stories about that show. I mean, I heard stories about that show and what you're talking about. So it was John Belushi was at that show. It was a lot of crazy energy back then.
Yeah.
But
now,
for me,
you saw him before you heard the solo album. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my very first experience with Jaco was through Weather Report, and it was Heavy Weather, because I remember buying that record. That was the first one I got, and then I got the solo record after, and then I got into the Joni Mitchell recordings, which I thought were amazing. So for me, he was like one of my biggest influences. I have to say Jaco, Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath, and Anthony Jackson, who played bass on For the Love of Money, OJ's, money, 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 don't know, no. And I ended up meeting him, around the time that we were filming for the interviews, and he ended up being really cool, and we stayed in contact. And I always sort of channeled their energy into what I would write for Infectious Grooves. There's a lot of specific moments where I'm actually pulling directly from the people that I grew up listening to. And Jaco is definitely a huge inspiration for Infectious. Absolutely. A song like Violent and Funky, off the Groove Family Psycho record. I mean, it's not a fretless bass, but that is absolutely, kind of a inspiration from him. And same thing with the song Therapy, which featured Ozzy off the first album. So it's all there. Yeah.
Now, I believe you have the bass of Doom. Have you used it on a recording yet?
Actually, it's on the EP. I used it on the EP, and I was heading out the door, and I knew I was gonna try. Like, I had cut a bass track already on the new song. "Take You on a Ride" is the title. I was like, I'm looking at the bass. I'm going, I hadn't committed to an instrument yet, and I'm going, I just grabbed it and I brought it to the studio. And I tell you, it was so beautiful. I mean, the sound and the way that the instrument felt. And I remember Mike Muir coming in because he was going to do some vocals, and the bass actually brought the song into a whole nother realm. I remember it was cool, and don't get me wrong, it was cool, but the personality of that instrument just took it into a different zone, to the point where Mike, who is not the easiest guy to please, was actually like, whoa, wait a minute, that's really cool. You know, wait, what's going on here? You know, it's like, you know, the bass, it speaks. It's a lot of mystery in the instrument. You know, and most people know the story of it, but
well, let's do a quick summary, because there may be some people that don't.
So the quick summary is the bass was stolen and gone and missing for about 22 years, and then it was found because a collector had it in New York City. There's a lot of rumors as to what happened and where it went and how it went there. And, you know, the only one who knows the truth is Jaco. So, you know, but it got held up in a legal dispute. So I sponsored to get the money from the collector for the family. So I sponsored the instrument, and because I sponsored the money, I ended up becoming the legal owner of it, which was interesting. And you know, so we're still tight. Like I'm still close to the family and everything. Felix actually had the bass for 3 or 4 years, and then Geddy Lee did a special book. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with it, but he did this incredible coffee table book. So the bass came back here to me, and we did an interview about the instrument and what it meant to me, and you know, he is a huge Jaco fan. I don't know if people know this, but Geddy Lee, who's also one of my heroes, it has a deep-rooted sort of connection for Jaco and his creativity. And you know, a song like YYZ, where he goes into the harmonics, a simple statement like that is. He said it was inspired by Jaco, you know, the instrumentals. So it's a powerful thing when you have a player like Jaco who can connect with so many different types of musicians in so many different styles of music, whether it's gospel or funk or jazz or rock or even, you know, again, metal. And then the bass itself is almost like its own personality. You could literally make a film about the bass itself. And because there's a whole, that wasn't even supposed to be a part of the movie, you know what I mean? Right. A part of the story, because it's a story in itself, kind of like the Red Violin. So anyway, so that's the short version. But the weirdest thing is that when I took on the project, and then the bass has something to do with it, there were people, and I didn't understand this, that didn't want to believe that the bass player of Metallica could be making or should be making a film about Jaco, because they didn't know me. So they didn't know about Infectious Grooves. They didn't know that I went to jazz school when I was 19. They didn't know that I saw Jaco. And a lot of these people, some of them weren't even born, you know, but they had the attitude like, you know, there was this sort of, I don't know, I call it flexing, but where you kind of like, you know, like there was almost a snob,
right?
A sense of snobbery.
Like you can't appreciate it, something of that effect.
Yeah,
right?
It was just like, it's impossible, you know. And I was like, because it's not in my DNA, so I didn't understand it. And then I started to get it a little bit, that there was this perception that, you know, I maybe didn't have the right to do this. And I was like, I didn't understand it. And the funniest thing about it is that all these incredible bass players who were older, the older musicians, got it and they loved it and they were respected. Oh, you know, this bass player who plays in Metallica. Oh my God, we love Metallica. You know, that kind of thing. And I was like, and that's where I was coming from. But some of the younger players didn't get it at first. They wanted to sort of control the idea of Jaco as their own and for a certain specific type of music. And I'm like, hey, this dude played on Ian Hunter's record, you know, All American Alien Boy. Hang on a second. You know, it's kind of like, wait, he inspired Infectious Grooves 100%. I wrote the music. I know. And it's like, and so I'm like, where it was really puzzled, you know? And so I think, in fact, I know once the film came out, people got it. They really got it, but they didn't get it at first. So here I am over 6 years kind of battling this weird energy that I didn't know really existed until people started kind of telling me. And I go, really? You know, part of that is too where we live. You know, we're fairly secluded. I'm not a big internet guy, so I'm not going on and reading things. And then I started to hear things and then read it, and then even got approached by some people. I was like, whoa, what was that all about? You know? And some people didn't know that I even knew the family. And I mean, I met Jaco's eldest son way before any of this movie stuff. I met him in Florida when I was on tour with Ozzy back in '96, and had started actually communicating with him even before that when I was in Infectious and Suicidal. So we became friends, you know, early on. And I even told him, I go, someday you got to make a film about your dad, because who he is and how he's inspired people, so important, and it should be understood, and people should learn about him. And you know, and I already knew like people like Flea were totally into him, and you know, other kind of rock musicians, alternative players. So you know, it definitely, I had to kind of go through the jungle on that one. And I always say I was in the jungle fighting off the spiders and the snakes and the, you know, it's so many twists and turns, running out of money. And, oh man, it was a crazy journey. But I tell you, when it was all said and done, it was probably, I'd have to say, the most incredible achievement for me, you know, beyond anything that I've achieved. And I've had a lot of, you know, incredible moments in my career. And that was definitely a highlight.
It's one of those things to where you don't do it for the money. You don't do it for any reason other than it's what you need to do. I call it soul work. You know, it's the work that you do for your soul. You don't do it for anything else.
It was passion driven, and we had no promo budget, none. And everything was word of mouth, and people, you know, kind of more street cred talking about it. And then, you know, it got picked up at first by Netflix, which was really cool. And it had a great run because they didn't even want it at first because they didn't understand a movie about a bass player. What? Bass player's a guy in the back who just
Jaco who? I mean,
yeah,
Jaco's one of those names to where when you say it, the people who know. You exchange this look in the eye that, oh, okay, all right, we have a connection now.
So it was kind of crazy. And then they released the film, and it had a 2-year run on Netflix, did really, really well, you know, in terms of capturing people's attention and it growing on even people who didn't understand what a bass was. You know, it's a life story. So we won a lot of people over, and now it's currently on Hulu and iTunes and Amazon, and you know, and it's out there. And every once in a while, I have people tell me, "Oh man, we love the film." And again, I mean, look, it's not for profit. I mean, it's impossible. I'll never. It's not like I'm ever going to make that money back. But it's not the point. The point is, I knew something told me that this had to be done, and I welcome and I hope that it can inspire others to do more about him and for him. You know, sort of the first step. But it was a challenge. But I do, again, I am absolutely, it exceeded what I would have imagined. And, you know, it was a great challenge. And, I'm happy we did it.
Your career seems to be the thread I see is someone who it does continually rise to the challenges. For example, you join Suicidal, then you start the project with Infectious Grooves. You have both of those going at the same time, just kind of moving along and not shying away from things. You seem to have a lot of energy and a strong work ethic.
Yeah, again, when I was young, I was very inspired by a lot of different kind of styles of music, and I never placed any rules on what I was listening to. So as I grew older, it was like, wow, you can like fuse these different styles together and you come up with this. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, what if you took, a James Brown groove and, type of groove inspired by with some Jaco influence, and you threw in some Slayer double kick patterns, and just like, you come up with these recipes. And, so I just got excited about trying different things. And at the same time, though, I loved, of course, loved Metallica, and, Suicidal was definitely a challenge for me because, the music was pretty relentless, and it was very physical, and the performances were physical. So all this stuff, you learn trial by fire. It's like I'm on stage in Germany, first show with Suicidal Tendencies. I'm witnessing the slam pit, for the first time at that intense level. And and then you go to Metallica. My first show, Metallica, was on stage with them performing in San Quentin State Penitentiary. So it's kind of like I'm like learning, again, the experience is happening and I'm learning at the same time. I remember James bumping into me, like I'd go to a mic to sing a backup and he would be there, and I'm thinking, well, oh, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to be here. And I go to another mic and then he'd be there, and I'd be like, oh, I get it. They don't stay on the same mic. Right. There's 4 mics and they use them all like at different times. So it's like nobody told me. It was like I had to learn by getting elbowed.
What was the biggest learning experience that you had joining Metallica aside from the microphones?
Well, okay, so I wasn't informed on exactly what sets we would playing, so the communication factor on material to learn was very loose. Mm-hmm. So I was learning things that I didn't need to learn, but it was good that I learned them because we ended up playing that stuff later on, years later. But I found myself in the first couple of years, having to learn stuff at the last minute, which required me to use notes on stage sometimes. And I don't like doing that. I wouldn't do it now. I don't like it, but I had no choice. It was kind of like, oh, we're playing, we would get into like, what was one of the ones I remember we played at the Fillmore, and we did 3 nights, I think it was.
Oh, this is the 30th anniversary or something?
No, not that. That one I was okay. That one I did my homework. So I became kind of like the musical director on that.
Okay.
I was helping the other
No surprises.
I was helping Geezer play through their songs. We did a medley with him, and Geezer, I remember he was like, "That's not the right key," and I'm like, "I know, but we play it. Metallica plays it in this key, but that's not the right key." I know, but Metallica plays it in this key, and we do this transition into it. And he was like, "Okay, so." And he pulled it off. I remember we're up there playing, but we had to review it, and I had to explain why it's, it's different than the Sabbath version. It's a little bit different, just things like that. And but we got through it, and I think that whole show for me was real edge of your seat, because in my mind, I was thinking to myself, well, the Metallica version is the Metallica version, but these guys coming on stage to play this song, they're going to be used to their version. And there's some key changes, and there's some little things here and there, and they got to know this. And my guys weren't really thinking like that. They weren't really thinking it's kind of like, just get up and rehearse the song. It's like, okay. So I was sort of the guy to go, oh yeah, by the way, those two chords are these chords, because in the Metallica version, we transition into that part like this. So, I kind of became that guy. But in the beginning, man, I was just like hanging on. I mean, I was like, it was crazy. It was kind of like jump in the water and swim, but I don't really know how to swim. So the challenge of Metallica was that everything was way more intense, as far as like, okay, we're doing a TV show today, and tomorrow we're flying down to LA to do to play a show for MTV. But then we got a video shoot, after that, and whatever. I mean, it was just kind of like everything was happening. I was living in LA, and all of a sudden I get the gig, and literally overnight I was in, San Francisco for the next year. And it's like, hold on, I got to go home to get some, clothes or something. It was intense. It was intense. But what I did learn from all of that is I kind of said to myself at one point, I go, I don't want to go through that again. I am going to make sure I'm ahead of the game. So I started learning songs like Dyer's Eve and Orion and Call of Cthulhu. I started learning songs that we weren't playing, but I wanted to play, and I had a feeling someday we might play them. You know what I mean? Freight Ends of Sanity. Freight Ends of Sanity is a crazy song. I knew at some point I wanted to play that song, and I knew if I was going to play that song, or we were going to play that song, I better learn it 5 years before we're going to play it. So I kind of started planning for the future a bit with Metallica.
So with tracks like Call of Cthulhu, some of the Ride the Lightning and Master Puppet tracks, of course, you had Cliff Burton on bass, and his lines are incredibly unique.
Amazing.
How do you balance your style with, say, those of Cliff to keep that original kind of spirit there, but also have it be yours at the same time?
Yeah, it's tricky because I like to celebrate the originator as much as possible. But then again, they're who they are, and I'm who I am. So there's a delicate balance. Like now I try to pursue more of the statement they were trying to make. You know what I mean? I kind of headed in that direction. When I was younger, I would have been probably more about like, well, that's their statement, I got to make my statement, So it's just, it's where you're at and what you're feeling. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like my son, he's a bass player. He's 15. His name is Ty. And he played a show with Suicidal Tendencies recently. And for some reason, the bass player had some visa issues. He's from Chile. Rod Diaz, like, amazing player. So Mike Muir asked Ty if he would do the gig, and it was a big show. It was a big punk festival in San Pedro. It was over 5,000 people there, and so he had to learn a large set of music, and it was really cool to hear him play those songs, very authentic, with a pick. Because I never played the songs with a pick, but he was playing that stuff the way I remember hearing it from the early stages. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, He went that direction, but he gave it the edge and the attitude that he has. So it just depends on the individual. And like I said, I've gone different directions. I mean, early on, I would have gone more in the directions for myself. Later, a bit more for him, try to, like, I find myself playing a 4-string more on the older songs. Back in the day, I would have never played a 4. I was like, I'm a 5-string player. You know what I mean? It depends.
So that's interesting. So you've had both views. You've had not only the person playing the version of it, but also as the originator, with your son playing your lines.
Yeah, he's playing my lines. But the cool thing now that I think of it, he was playing some of my stuff that I was playing on the 5. He was playing it on the 4. So he was just like readjusting to that. But I was more impressed that he was playing the early Suicidal stuff, like War Inside My Head and all that, subliminal, and he was playing it the way Luigi Mayorga did back in the day, with the pick, hitting the same feel and flavor. Dave Lombardo was playing drums, from Slayer. This is only a few, this is like, I don't know, a few months back, 7 months ago, something. It was awesome. And I just was like, there you go, man. It's, it's so neat to when that can happen sometimes too. You kind of, you're bringing it in its original form, I guess you could say. There's something to be said for that. So, but it varies, it's hard to say what's right and what's not right. Cause I understand a player should be their own player. And then sometimes it's nice when they go with a more authentic approach.
You've been in unique situations. For example, re-recording Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, playing the work of Bob Daisley. Was the mission there to do kind of a note for note, feel for feel, or to be able to add your own flavor as well?
Well, that was a weird situation because I didn't even know what we were doing. It was like I was asked to do this session and I'm doing it, but I don't even know why we were doing it really. And it's just, and I was employed by Sharon and Ozzy at the time. So I just did what I was told to do or I do. And I didn't look into it too deep. In fact, I almost always, I forget about it. I forget that ever even happened. And I wasn't sure, was there other players that, played on it too? So I don't put a lot of thought into that. I mean, at that time, I would have definitely tried to play as close to what he did and definitely try to not bring me into that. Cause I have, for me, Bob Daisley is just a tremendous player and nobody can touch his style and his approach to writing bass or his technique. He plays, he's a pick player who plays, I guess kind of like Jaco, he has a very strong attack and the feel of a finger player. And he's really, really funky. So I have nothing but love and respect for him. And I'm super stoked that actually, I think at the end of the day, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost sure that his versions of the music, I always knew that they're always there. So it didn't even matter. It was like, you're always going to get Bob's version of the music because that's what you're going to hear 98% of the time. You know what I mean? And then it ends up coming out anyways as a kind of a remastered release as well. So, the thing that I had done was sort of a moment in that, in that time over the years. And then of course, Bob's stuff lives on and that's what everybody ends up hearing in the long run,
Look,
classic.
One of my favorite Frank Zappa albums, We're Only in It for the Money. Zappa went in and had all the drums and bass re-recorded as well. And that's the version that I kind of grew up with. So that's the one I know. At the end of the day, both versions are available. People can pick and choose. And really, there's no reason to have that much of a debate because you do have that other version you can always go to.
Oh, yeah. You have that version in the original state on the original records like I have and everybody else that loves Ozzy has. And then you have stuff that would have been in more recent times, remastered. So it's all there. It's not, if it would have been like, hey, do your thing on it, then I would have done, I don't know. I've probably gone a slightly different route, but not to discredit what was originally done. Cause to me, that is, in that situation, that's the gold in my mind.
Right.
So but an interesting thing is it comes up every once in a while. Someone will mention it, but it doesn't last too long. It's kind of like, hey, did you play on this? And I'm like, and I have to kind of think back and go, oh yeah, wait, yeah, I did that. Yeah. But it's never like, it never turns into that because it's kind of like, well, yeah, everything exists, anything that was recorded exists and you can find it like this, there doesn't need to be a drama to it.
Playing along with Randy's guitar work solo, that must have been quite an experience.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, Randy is one of my heroes. I mean, I had the good fortune of seeing him play at Guitar Center before he was playing with Ozzy. It was the middle of the day.
Yeah.
They were handing him guitars. There's nobody in there except me. And I was like, I don't know how old I was, but I was just blown away. And I think I remember he was playing like what would have been Diary of a Madman. And I said to him, wow, those are beautiful chords. I said something like, do you like John McLaughlin? I remember I said something weird. And he was very quiet. He was like kind of just nodded like yes or something weird. I don't remember.
Kid, I'm trying out guitars here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like don't bother me right now, but he's not mean. So but selfishly I can say at least one of the rewards, if there was any, the reward for that was hearing the outtake jams that they were doing beyond what you heard on the original arrangements. Like all of a sudden there's like, oh, the song goes another minute and Randy's still soloing, you know what I mean? And there would be like some jokes, like you could hear them talking. That was, again, selfishly, that was really like, wow, this is, I'm hearing this and nobody else in the world is hearing this. That's the one thing that I do remember. And then Lemmy coming in the studio and hanging out.
Okay.
Him for the first time, which was
you've done the Jaco movie. Now it looks like Randy's probably the follow-up there.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem is when you take on a doc film, you are inheriting all their musicians, all their friends. Some of them don't like each other, family members. It's like, it's really a huge responsibility and you're kind of caught in the middle of a lot of different things. And my job became sort of to really try to keep the balance, a lot of times to keep the peace. It's also to make a film of quality, and then there's music releases and everything is very, very, very expensive. So I kind of went into it not realizing that there were all these tentacles that were going to be so challenging attached to that experience. But it's funny. I literally was like, I can't, I love what I did with Jaco, but I can never do a documentary film ever again. And then I started going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I was checking out Eric Burden, from the Animals, and seeing him with War. And I'm like, this guy's amazing. And then hearing a little bit about his story, and he, obviously he's still alive. I'm just kind of, oh man, this would be a great film. You know what I mean? And he hung out with Jimi Hendrix, but again, it's tough. It might be even tougher too when you're dealing with somebody who is, here now and they're going to have their opinion too, along with the other opinions and everything, and then it's just it's involved.
It kind of strikes me that you'd be very good at this because you do have that appreciation, you have the patience, but you also have the diplomacy to be able to navigate what is almost definitely there's going to be choppy waters in any of that.
Yeah, diplomacy is important in any situation in life. I mean, everything. I mean, it's the key to, like, when you're in a band, there's a lot of great players, a lot of tremendous players. The hardest thing is getting people to get along, you know what I mean? And, people have different point of views. One of the things in Metallica that is really interesting to me is that we're all very different people. We don't always get along, or we don't always see eye to eye, but I generally end up being kind of the guy who kind of, tries to see the positive.
Okay, James, Lars says he's sorry.
or it's just kind of like, we end up, it just, it happens where I don't know, in all the situations I've been in, whether it was with Ozzy or with Suicidal, or even when I did the Jerry Cantrell record, there's always a certain level of understanding where it's like, okay, this is this is my job and what I do, and I feel why I'm here, and how can I make this work? How can I help create the magic? How can we get through, if there's choppy water, how do we get through the choppy water? It's like, and I think that goes back to family, it's like growing up. It's like,
Absolutely.
Your parents, your youth and what you dealt with. It's like, how can you take the energy of that and offer it to the band situation or the personalities of specific situations? And I tell you, I've been blessed with the people a lot of people that I've grown up looking up to and being inspired by, and even current people that are peers and that I've had the good fortune of working with today. And it's never always just easy. You're going to have some challenges. It's almost like the more special a creative person is, the more challenge you're going to get, but you stick it out because, the end result's going to be important to you and maybe to people out there too, but it's art, man. And art's, never that easy. people are a trip.
Yeah.
You got to learn
I guess
how to deal with
sometimes
them.
the bigger the artistic gift, the more it needs to be managed. And a lot of times that management comes from, an external party to be able to help that person kind of move their path.
Yeah. I agree. I look at it like, hey, I'm pretty good at, navigating through some of this. If I can help, I will help. And so that's where I'm at with these different situations regarding bands and musicians and stuff like that.
Now, understanding right now with COVID and, probably some of the last things that are going to open up, I don't even know if we're going to see them in 2020, stadiums. If smaller bands, they're going to be able to start doing gigs here and there. Clubs and larger places will start to open up. But I imagine Metallica is probably going to be one of the last bands to be able to get back on the road. What are the plans between now and then? Have you spoken about it?
Well, we communicate every week, which is really great. So we have our connection intact. And what we've started doing is basically just really concentrating on our home studios and being creative from our homes and navigating through ideas and building on new ideas. And that's where we're at right now. We're excited about cultivating new ideas. I mean, and to be honest, and everybody's in a good headspace for the most part, and that's pretty much our focus now. Is just let's have fun with this. That's part of the reason why I was telling you I got some updated recording gear, and I'm getting ideas together, and we're checking kind of each other's vibes out on new stuff. And that's pretty much where we're at. We haven't talked about touring lately. And I'll tell you, we just did nearly 3 years on the Hardwired album. And of course, Australia is like one of my favorite places on the planet to go play, and South America as well. So we will get back down there. I'm not too worried about that. I know we will. Obviously we got to get through this quarantine and all the stuff that's happening with that.
Yeah.
But meantime, we're creating, and I think that is really cool, because sometimes it takes a while to get the band together, get the 4 individuals who are living in different places in the same room. But it's like, hey, guess what? We don't have to be in the same room right now. We can make music from our homes and work together and build stuff. And then we'll get in that room together,
right,
and we'll bang this stuff out, but we'll be 40 steps ahead.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of demos, a lot of ideas, preparation for what is perhaps a future recording session.
Working towards that. Absolutely working towards that. There's no definite plan as to, a release date or we're just sort of now cultivating the terrain and getting kind of excited about it, to be honest. It's kind of a cool thing that we've been able to start focusing on that, because it's new for us. We haven't done it this way. I don't think many people have done it this way. Everybody's got to kind of restructure their
routines,
their routines and their creative flow, and and at some point all this will transition into what it's going to transition into. We'll have live shows again, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new music coming, because most musicians are writing new stuff right now, and that's exciting to me.
There's a lot going on, and I think a lot of artists have something they want to express and an opinion on the times, whether it be COVID or some of the protests or anything. So
there's a lot to write about. There's a lot to create, and and that's the true artists will definitely channel that way.
So Robert, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm getting ready to wrap it up. Is there anything you wanted to cover that we haven't covered yet?
I think this has been great. Thank you for the time. And we got to talk about a lot of different things, and everybody out there, be safe, and you stay safe. And we you learn how you need to be, and stay positive. Positive is very important, and we'll all get through this and celebrate all this creativity and whatever it is that we're doing, as long as it's positive, and move forward.
That's the one thing about tough times. It generally creates fantastic art. So that's the one thing that kind of keeps us going to just imagine the music that we're going to get in 2021.
I totally agree. And the beaches are a lot cleaner than they were. That's for sure. I know this. It's like
and we're all coming out of this thing much better cooks.
Yes, I've been cooking. I've been cooking like crazy. Yeah, good. I didn't do that so well before. I think I'm getting better at it.
All right, Robert. Thank you again for spending time with us.
Okay, take care. Cheers.
All right, well, thank you so much again, Robert. Again, Record Store Day is coming. Everyone, put your orders in now for the Infectious Grooves limited edition vinyl copy of Take You on a Ride. And by the way, keep in mind that the other Infectious Groove Record Store Day releases are now worth like 4 or 5 times the price. So you'd be smart to reserve and pick one up early. And again, thank you so much, Robert, for coming on the Vinyl Guide, and we hope to see you back on tour soon. Alrighty, and that is it for this week's episode of the Vinyl Guide. Episode 230 is in the books. Wait till you see who we have for episode 231. Please subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Sonnet, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can go to thevinylguide.com as well. And if you are able to, please consider becoming a show patron at patreon.com/vinylguide. I'm always putting extra stuff up there, extended interviews, secret episodes, and more. That's patreon.com/vinylguide. And of course, we love it when you share these episodes on social media. Put it on Facebook, Instagram, tweet it out on Twitter. I really appreciate it when you guys are sharing with your friends and your communities up on social media. And if you really want to do a super duper solid for me, please give us a positive review on iTunes or podcasts, wherever you get these. Just go up there, log in, give us 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 stars. Say something nice, make me blush. That rules the planet. Again, happy 4th of July to all our American friends. Be well, stay safe, and we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, keep spinning. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.